Bienvenidos. I'm Gabriela Watson-Burkett, your co-host. Welcome to episode 9.
Hola, mi gente. I am Vicky Diaz-Camacho, your other co-host. Time has flown, ¿verdad? So here is what is on our radar.
What is civic engagement? Vicky, oftentimes when we go out on the streets to do our reporting, as you know, people struggle to have a concrete response about that. So with this episode, we really aim to enlighten our audience about the meaning of civic engagement.
Yeah, what it is and what it isn't, right? I mean, thinking about what civic engagement is, it's kind of buzzwordy to me. So even as a young person living in El Paso, Texas, I do remember it didn't really click for me until I got involved in music and the music scene. And what was interesting was seeing how some politicians really took to grassroots organizing and using that as a conduit to connect with people. And the person I'm talking about is Beto O'Rourke, who was a punk kid himself, and then used that as a way to connect with others, which I think is a pretty powerful tool. Do you have a personal connection to how civic engagement kind of gave meaning to your life?
Growing up, I saw a lot of that engagement through the work of my parents. Via Inti. Shout out to the nonprofit organization in São Paulo who supported immigrants. I think our communities love to support each other.
Yes.
And mutual aid is something very important to the Latino and Black and Brown communities. But when it comes to using that power to channel into advancing social issues or making sure we have our rights, a lot of individuals feel hesitant.
Sure. It makes sense.
Like, let's say, oh, do you care about homelessness or about poverty or hunger? Obviously, a lot of folks deeply care about it.
Yeah.
But if you ask people to help you in a campaign or go to City Hall or go to downtown protest, people might feel uncomfortable doing those things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think you also have a sense of feeling in danger or doing something radical. When going after our rights, it's part of being a citizen.
Right. And I think there's a disconnect there with some people not understanding that these service-oriented acts are really related to what is quote-unquote civic engagement, because I think, as we said earlier, it feels sterile. It feels very calculated, like a focus group, in a weird severance-like, setting. But it's really much more. And it's critical for Latinos because we do have the lowest voter turnout. And so how do we activate the people who want to make meaningful change in their world, right? And I think it starts probably with civic engagement.
In a previously recorded interview, we talked to Mari Gonzalez. She is the president on the board of Philadelphia's League of United Latin American Citizens Council, LULAC. We talked about the meaning of community engagement and otras cositas más. Let's check it out.
Coming back to LULAC, when we're talking about civic engagement, we're not just talking about like city council and the mayor. We're talking about your friends of the park. We're talking about your going to the school board. We're talking about every level of government having an intentional role in that so that we can have a place that, that one is welcoming for us and our future generations.
As sometimes we try to engage the community, especially the Latina, Black and Brown community, into voting, there's so much resistance.
We should take the people who are engaged, who are voting, and increase their participation in the system. And I think that we should lead with showing change instead of like telling people, well, if you want to see change, you got to vote. Or if you want to see change, you want to vote, right? Which it's valid and it's true, but that's not how we work as humans. We want to see the results first. When people think of voting and they say, well, the park across the street has not changed, since. And it was like, well, maybe your mayor is not your best person for that. Okay, maybe you want to go to Parks and Rec. So knowing who does what and where to get things solved. I think it's also a piece of it because people get frustrated with, oh, my council person doesn't do this or my council person doesn't do that. Is your council person the best person for that role?
Right.
Or is there a department that you should be reaching out to instead? Perhaps your council person can help you through that process. Maybe the question is, what is that process? How do I best move this along? And so that makes it hard because things are broken up for a good reason, but it also makes it difficult to navigate. What I see is that we're a growing population in numbers, but I do not see that we have, at least for the Latino population, and it's not unique to us. We're not having the representation that we need. Where's the voice for us when there's important decisions being made? And so we saw LULAC as a sense of community, because we have members that grew up in Oregon, and we have members that grew up in South Jersey or grew up in North Philly, and they're all coming together under the understanding that we want to help each other move forward.
When you think of civic engagement, I think that there's this lofty idea of what it is, and we lose touch with the human part, which I like that you raised right now, and that there's more power within the community to build coalitions, to build groups and networks, right? The social capital that you mentioned. So talk a little bit about that and how, that has fueled you in your own career or your own community, and you as also a parent.
This is a great time for coalition building. Everyone is kind of, everyone's processing a lot. There's a lot of changes happening rather quickly. Right. And so finding organizations, instead of creating something new, finding organizations or groups that represent your values is a really great place. So you don't have to take on the world, but kind of figure out what your part is. And everyone has kind of these talents and these skills. What's my unique talent, and how can I leverage it to do my piece of the work?
The idea of civic engagement may seem abstract, but you're not alone. So I did a quick search and found this to be very helpful. It's from the American Psychological Association. It says, quote, individual and collective actions designed to identify and address issues of public concern. With that in mind, today our conversation examines how community experts and leaders are activating this work. Our guest in the studio today is Andria Bibiloni, Executive Director of the Norris Square Neighborhood Project, a nonprofit serving youth and families in Kensington. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you are also a lawyer, a visual artist, and educator. As a lawyer, you were an Independence Foundation Public Interest Law Fellow at Philadelphia Legal Assistance. A mouthful, sorry about that.
You got it right.
Yeah, but you were focused on vacant land policy and property ownership rights for longtime residents in Kensington, right? But you're also a Puerto Rican from New York.
Yes.
Very nice. But you're in Norris Square now, and you call it home.
Yeah, I've been living in the neighborhood since about 2019.
So congrats. In a minute or two, could you recap the history behind the nonprofit? Highlights?
I'll give it a try. Norris Square Neighborhood Project was founded in 1973 by Natalie Kempner and Helen Loeb. They were educators who wanted to bring environmental education to the youth in Kensington. Natalie Kempner taught in what used to be an elementary school right next door. Currently, it's a senior center. And during a time when there was a teacher strike, she just kept on hosting groups of children, wanting to make sure that they had access to quality after-school programming and opportunities to go and spend time in nature. And so ever since then, we've carried on that legacy, but our mission has kind of expanded in a way in terms of making sure that we're also putting the preservation of the Puerto Rican culture of the neighborhood at the forefront of everything that we do. And there was a group of women in the community, they call themselves Grupo Motivos, women with a motive.
Cool.
founded by Iris Brown, Tomasita Romero, and other women who were working either for the organization or adjacent to the organization in the community. And they were the ones who really took it upon themselves to clean and green the vacant lots that are now beautiful gardens dedicated to different aspects of the Puerto Rican culture. And so, over time, that element of making sure that we're not only providing quality environmental education, but opportunities for youth to connect with their culture through food that they grow, right? Things that we cook, songs, traditional folk dance that they learn. And so, it's a long storied history of 53 years, many, many different leadership changes over time. But we feel really fortunate to be staying strong.
Such a cool story. It's amazing.
Yes.
And the gardens are beautiful and huge.
Yes, absolutely. So, why is it important for the youth to have access to gardens in Philadelphia, right? In a city like Philadelphia, in an area like Norris Square? And what has been the feedback that you got from this youth by interacting with the environment?
Well, I've only, as I said, been in the community for a few years now, and I've only been, officially leading the organization for about a year. But what I see happening for youth in the gardens is that they have the ability to learn about where food comes from. They have the ability to develop relationships with one another while learning how to tend to these spaces. Kensington and Norris Square, these are historically redlined, disinvested areas of Philadelphia where there was blight, right? The communities have had to struggle living through the height of the open air drug market. And of course, now the area is gentrifying, but at the time when the women of the community were cleaning and greening these lots, right, they were doing it to heal. There had been a federal drug bust in I believe it was the late 80s, early 90s, that resulted in around 60 arrests. And everyone, I think, thought that would be a good thing until they realized that, this was people's uncles, aunts, mothers, fathers, right? Important members of the community that were now no longer there, right? And so the way that I hear Edie Brown talk about it is that coming together, to clean and transform these spaces, it was an act of healing, and it was with the intent of creating spaces where children and elders could come together, right, and learn about who they are and keep certain traditions alive. And so, I see the youth becoming stewards of these spaces. And I love, every time I meet an alumni, somebody who they'll say, oh yeah, I ate my first piece of broccoli at Norris Square Neighborhood Project, and that might have been sometime in the 80s, right? And now they're a grown adult, and they've got their own kids, and people just have these really specific, nostalgic experiences, getting to be in touch with the nature and the culture, in a space where you wouldn't expect to find that, right?
It's so true. I love the fact that it's not only environmental, but it's, the taste memory. You think about that, how nostalgic it is, like thinking of sofrito that your grandma made or something like that. It brings you back to the culture and community. And so you're bringing this to the youth, but also it's multi-generational. So it's building those connections, and I love to see that.
Exactly. I think it's really awesome that we're now next to a senior center, and over time, I know the former executive director, Teresa Elliott, who was there for about 5 years before I stepped in, was always looking for opportunities to invite folks from the senior center over to play dominoes. And those are the kinds of things that we like to keep, going,
Yeah.
and also, looking for opportunities to facilitate programming in the gardens where youth are actually getting to learn from their elders about, let's say, medicinal plants or different types of cooking. But it takes effort, right, to build those relationships, to build trust. You young people, unfortunately, don't always get a good reputation.
Yeah.
Folks may assume that they're going to be checked out, that they're not going to be interested, that they're going to be disrespectful. And so, I think that, and then, similarly, maybe the young people have certain preconceptions about, older folks, right? And so, it really takes effort and a lot of intent, on the part of our staff. We have some really wonderful young instructors and a wonderful youth program director who do their best to both make it about youth voice and youth choice, while also, trying to work on relationship building with other members of the community so that we can facilitate these kinds of unique experiences.
Wow. And you also called it a third space, which I think is pretty powerful because we're missing that in the city.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that kind of struck me when I first started was that the kids would come in after school and there wasn't really like a programmed activity for them when they first got there. There's food, right? We always have been making an effort to prepare hot meals, and staff take turns. Mostly the instructors, and we're lucky that we have wonderful people who know how to cook for 30 people at a time. But the kids kind of come in, they get some food, sometimes they just put their head down, they are relaxing. And then there's a programmed activity, from like 4 to 5. And it was kind of like, well, what's happening in this 2:30 to 4 o'clock space? And it's very intentional, right? Making sure that the youth have an opportunity to kind of like decompress from the whole day of being in school. A lot of times they are traveling on the L to get to school, and then they're walking from school, to our space before they have to go home. And there are a lot of things that they see on the way, right? I mean, we all know that the epicenter of the opioid epidemic in Philadelphia is just up the street from where we are located off the York Dolphin stop. And a lot of times our youth are, they're encountering this all the time. So for them to be able to come to us and just have something good to eat, see their friend, just give us a download of what happened in school that day, or just, sit quietly, whatever they need to do, right, is super important, and that they feel like, it's another, like they're around family and friends when they come to us. Yeah.
So lovely.
I know that you have many gardens, right? And they have different characteristics, right? One garden is dedicated to more Afro-Caribbean culture. Can you talk about the differences of the gardens?
Sure. And again, this is all part of the vision of, one of our garden founders, Edie's Brown, who I call an artist and a visionary. The idea was to have these different spaces that were dedicated to different aspects of the Puerto Rican culture, right? Puerto Ricans are a diaspora and we're a mixed race people. So we have influences from Africa, from the indigenous people of Puerto Rico, the Tainos, and from Europe, Spain and other places, not to mention all the other countries that, people end up coming from and settling in Puerto Rico. So, we have a garden called El Batey. It's named after the indigenous Taino sort of gathering circles. And that garden is kind of our main vegetable production garden. And it's dedicated to the Taino culture. So you'll find petroglyphs there that symbolize fertility, the sun, the coqui, which is, a frog that's native to Puerto Rico. And that's where we are growing the majority of the vegetables that the youth in our Raíces de Cambio program grow. And everything is started from seedlings in our basement in the wintertime and then planted in the ground there. And we're growing at things like corn, pigeon peas or gandules, different types of peppers, tomatoes, depending on, what is going to be most productive for that season. We have a Via Africana Colobo, which is dedicated to the West African influence in Puerto Rican culture. And Edie's built like 3 replicas of, what she imagines, a dwelling, a hut would look like in Africa. And there's also a wonderful storytelling room that has vejigante masks, right? That's a traditional folk art mask that's made in Loíza, which is the pueblo in Puerto Rico that she comes from, that it traditionally has folks with African roots, who are from there. There are all sorts of books about, both African culture and Puerto Rican culture and African American culture even a little bit. And in that garden, we have a lot of medicinal plants. When Iris does workshops for making alcoholado, which is like an infusion, right, of different medicinal herbs with alcohol. We typically do it there because a lot of the plants that are used are grown there. We have Las Parcelas, which is our largest garden, and is probably the most iconic because of the casita that we have there. And it's like a replica of a 1940s style wooden casita that you would see in the Puerto Rican countryside. And that structure has been there for probably 30 years. It was originally constructed with help from the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, who also, helped get trees planted there and, do a lot of the things that were needed to establish that space. We also have a garden called Raíces, and that is kind of like the home base for the Raíces de Cambio program. We're also growing herbs and some vegetables there, and the weekly farm stand that our Raíces program runs takes place there every Saturday from 10 to 1 from July through November. Let's see, we also have La Paz Garden, and that's more of a children's garden and a reflective kind of space. And we have our butterfly garden that's right next to our office, and that's actually a memorial garden dedicated to the founders, Natalie Kempner and Helen Loeb.
Okay, that's so awesome. When I was looking through the website, obviously, quotes kind of stick with me. And I wanted to read one, and it's by the late Tomasita, right? And can you explain for those who don't know who that is?
So Tomasita Romero was a neighbor who lived on 2nd Street across the street from Las Parcelas. And she was involved with Norris Square Neighborhood Project for many years while an executive director named Sister Carol Keck was running the organization. Tomasita and Edith Brown became good friends and did a lot of work together in Las Parcelas and the other gardens.
And she, obviously, her spirit is very much honored throughout the programs. But her quote was, "Many of us in the neighborhood spent our lives surrounded by flowers and trees in Puerto Rico. Urban Philadelphia was a jolt to my system, and I spent 35 years wishing I could see beautiful things in my neighborhood. And now that exists."
Yeah, and when people come to the gardens, it looks like that it just came there overnight, and it really was a labor of love. And, when I think about the time and the investment that the women from the community who created and nurtured that space invested, it's just incredible. The Norris Square Neighborhood Project, the nonprofit organization, did not always own and steward those spaces. It really was a project of the women of Grupo Motivos.
Yeah.
And it was, through their advocacy, for the importance of these spaces, together with other members of the community, that Norris Square Neighborhood Project, ended up becoming the official, owner or steward of those spaces, and has been able to help support the maintenance of those spaces.
And another goal of the project is to ensure that youth have the tools to speak up right? So, what are the strategies that you guys implement to get the youth involved?
So, youth are given opportunities to suggest activities. They're also given leadership opportunities, especially over the summer. We actually have close to 60 youth coming to be
Wow.
with us every single day. And so, we've identified that it's really helpful to have certain youth who are, they don't even have to be juniors or seniors. They just, the youth who seem to, exhibit these leadership qualities and that other youth, are kind of looking to for cues, that they become part of a leadership team, that also gets to help design certain aspects of programming. In the past, I know NSNP has taken youth to Harrisburg for Advocacy Day, and that's something that I'd really like to see us do this year, because it's more important than ever that we advocate for funding for after school and summer programming for youth. When the Raíces de Cambio youth are planning their growing season, they are involved in coming up with the crop plan, right? So what are you going to plant where and why? They're also involved in decisions around figuring out what prices to set and how to get people to come to the space. I've mentioned Raíces a lot, but our main program is called Semillas del Futuro, and that program serves about 100 youth annually, and that's the space in which a lot of the youth are given these different types of leadership opportunities. And I think also one of the things that kind of helps with, I don't know, stretching, I think, their boundaries a little bit, is when in the summertime we have a collaboration with Los Bomberos de la Calle. It's a traditional Puerto Rican folk dance group, and they learn, and everybody gets exposure to learning bomba en plena and doing the performance, which it's not for everybody, right? But they kind of, get that experience, and then, being able to see certain youth really take to it and really gain confidence through doing that is really a beautiful thing. We also have a great partnership with Photography Without Borders, and so being able to give youth an opportunity to figure out what interests them in terms of the types of things that they're capturing through photography, and also back to developing relationships with the seniors. They've done collaborations with the senior center where they're interviewing elders from the community and taking their portraits. So those are just a few, examples.
That's cool. And I think that then builds this natural inclination to be involved in, like, when we're talking about civic engagement, it starts there. What do you care about? What do you like to do? And then so on, right? And so I'm seeing the entrepreneurship being sparked. I see, farming as kind of that conduit, which is so powerful, but it's rooted in cultural preservation, which I do think can activate this like newfound sense of empowerment, right?
Yeah, and I think that was part of the intention of Grupo Motivos, was that youth should feel proud of who they are and where they come from, right? And through learning these different traditions, right, they will learn how special it is, right, to be who they are and to honor their ancestry, right, and to want to carry that forward.
So thank you so much, Andria.
Oh, it was a real pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Beautiful interview, and we hope we keep the audience motivated to be engaged with their communities.
And there's some very specific ways that you can come and be involved with us. We're always looking for tutors for our after-school program. During that chill time, we also make space for youth to do homework, and it's a wonderful time for adults to come and support our youth with math, science, English, history, any of those things. And we'd also love for you to come visit us at our weekly farm stand that again, happens every Saturday. The address is 2217 North 2nd Street. It's right off the corner of 2nd and Susquehanna in Norris Square. So please follow us on Instagram at My Neighborhood Project.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Já acabou, gente.
Dang.
Well, thank you so much for joining Diálogos today. Make sure to go to intimedia.org to see more articles and other short documentaries.
Yes, and check out our latest Diálogos episodes. We're so proud of those, right?
Yes.
So those are on Spotify and YouTube. Please share, comment, and tag us on social at News by Inti Media.
Ashe.
Nos vemos.